Hi there. If you want to learn how to create sound effects, then you are in the right place. In this video, I'll be answering a viewer's question, and this person left a comment on one of my videos asking if I would show my most used plugins, the plugins I used the most, and if I could sort them by category and show all the plugins that I use in my day-to-day work as a sound designer. So that's exactly what I'm going to do in this video. Make sure to check the chapters below the video because I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to separate them by category. I'll probably have 10 or more categories, and I'll go over all of my most used plugins for each of those and stuff I use, like I said, in my day-to-day work. So with that said, let's get into Reaper, and I'll show you the plugins I use and also some examples to go with them. All right, so here we are inside of Reaper, and the first category that we'll go over is dynamics. So there's kind of three different sections or three different kind of plugins that I think about when I'm using this. The first is going to be just your volume control. So normally I'm either going to do it directly in Reaper on, let's say, like a track like this, and I might automate sounds like that with a volume. But also what I like to do if I'm just balancing items together, like let's say I have this sound effect here, and I just want to balance sound together. Right, let's say I have this sound here, and let's say I want to hear more of this sound. Right, it's not loud enough, let's say, for my liking, just as an example here. So what I might do here is I'll actually insert a plugin on here and just bring that up like that. And the reason I do that is so that when I pull in my mixer here, and I have my mixer on a separate window, but when I pull in my mixer here, if I go and have a look here, I have my gain here, and instead of pulling down, let's say, the volume knob here, I can keep the volume of everything at 0 so that if ever I make a mistake, for example, by accident, I pull something down or whatever, I can immediately see that something is off. And also, it's just an easy way for me to control the volume. If I want to automate this, I can do that here. I mean, I can do that with these as well, but I just find it a lot easier a lot more manageable, and I can see exactly where the volume is ducking, where the volume is getting lower, and how it's getting affected in the chain, right? So if I lower the volume here, and then I insert other effects, it could affect how the post effects are getting applied. So, right, so if I have something like, right, so let's say I have something like snap heap inserted after the gain here, and I have an audio follower, it's going to affect the way, let's say I have a shaper table, sure. And let's say I'm assigning that to the mix here. Okay. So if I solo this band here, it's going to affect how the audio follower is going to affect the mix here. Right. You can see there's not much gain. If I increase the gain here even more to 12, let's say, right, it's going to go up a lot. Right. So it's going to affect how this is affecting this plugin here, right? And as soon as you start having more complex chains and adding a lot more sounds and things, it's a good way to manage where your sound is increasing in volume, where it's lowering in volume, and at what point in the chain, right? So that's another reason why I do it this way. Again, it's partially like personal preference, and I just really, it's a good workflow for me in terms of like keeping track of where everything is, how everything's lining up, and just balancing everything the way I want it to be. All right, let's get that out of the way, right? Super simple plugin. Probably nobody's interested in seeing that, but let's look at the other ones. So the other ones are multi-band compressors, or just compressors in general. So usually for a compressor, you'll be affecting the full frequency spectrum of a band, and for that, I would probably use something like Neutron compressor to do that. Honestly, I don't normally use much compression in my work, personally, as in like a single band compressor like this. What I like to do is multi-band compression, and for that, I use 2 or 3 different plugins. The first one is going to be OTT. This is probably a really common one that you'll see a lot of people using, right? So you have your upward and downward compression, you have your depth, how much you want to apply to the sound, and then you have your bands here, like how much is going to be applied to each band. Right, so that's one, and of course that one's free. The other one that I personally have been playing a lot with and I kind of like here is Squash by Minimal Audio, and this is similar to an OTT, except here it's all the information is all on this one XY pad. So left to right, you have your tone. Up and down, you have your depth, kind of like on OTT. And then down is your, I think is your downward compression, and then up is your upward compression. I might be wrong here. I haven't read into the manual or anything like that, but that's kind of, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's how it works. So if I play it now, take it off again. Right, so you can see how it's affecting the sound based on where it is in the XY pad here. Let's say I wanted more highs here. I could just go like this. Right, so it's just a nice way to compress your sound and also play around with the tone a little bit. Now, another one that I also like to use, depending on the sound source and the instance here, is uber loud. So I like to have the 3 band. Sometimes I'll just go for the 1 band and just boost this like this. Right, that could work. A lot of the times, though, I would like, or I will opt in for the multi-band because I will probably want to affect a certain part of the frequency and shape the tone of that frequency. So if I play it, maybe I want more mids, maybe a bit less highs, and maybe more lows. Right, and with that, you can really shape the tone of your sound. Another thing that I will sometimes do here is use a reaper parameter modulation here and actually modulate based on the incoming signal. So based on this sound, I'm going to modulate, for example, the lows here. Right, so it's a bit more natural. It's a bit more of a natural way of adding in low end. Usually I do that for the low end, but you can do that for the mids and the highs as well. It's just a more natural way, I find, to add some more low end or body to your sound. All right, finally, one of the last plugins that I use almost all the time here is the Smart Limiter. So this is a smart limiter from Sonable. And there's nothing special or crazy about this. I usually set my limit to around -1 dB true peak so that my peak never goes beyond 1 dB, -1 dB. That's kind of industry standard. It's very common practice to do that. And then in terms of like the gain here, I will change that based on the material that I have feeding through it. So for example, for this one, it's already pretty loud. I could try to maybe boost it a little bit. Right, depending on if I want to cut the peaks or not, I might do that or not. But with that, this is just a simple use of a smart limiter. I always have this on my mastering chain as well. So if I show you my master bus here, actually I don't have it on here, but I normally always have it on my master bus on here. Yeah, usually it's the last thing on my mastering bus before I get like insight and balance control. These are just to show me kind of what my sound sounds like and give me information about my sound. Especially this balance control is more for music, but insight is more for like volume, and you can also have your sound field and stuff like that. So yeah, before it goes out into that, I usually have my smart limiter on here, and that kind of keeps everything in check for my project. All right, so this is category number 1, dynamics. Let's go to category number 2 here, and this is going to be my EQs. So EQs I will use based on different purposes. So the first way that I might use an EQ is for surgical fixing up of sound. So the first thing I might use for surgical sound is going to be neutron EQ. So this is going to be usually my surgical tool for like removing certain frequencies here. So if we play our sound, maybe there's like a frequency here I don't like. All right, maybe it's a bit resonant for me. I want to bring that down. Might do that here like that. Right, so I use this surgically. Another common one to use would be the FabFilter Pro Q. I don't have it, but if you were going to look at getting an EQ, FabFilter Pro Q is probably the industry standard, and you probably want to look into that. Personally, I don't have it, so I use this for now. But yeah, this is what I would use for surgical removal of sounds or of certain frequencies. The other one that I do really love to use, and I actually use this way more than Neutron's EQ, and this is Soothe 2. So this is Soothe 2 by OEK Sound, and this is a really, really great EQ. It's kind of a resonant suppressor. So instead of working as a normal EQ, like this would be a boost on a normal EQ, what it actually does is it searches for resonant frequencies in the boosted areas here, and then it'll actually pull them down. So if I play it now, and you can also see, like, because there's so many resonant frequencies up here, it's already pulling them down, even though I don't have it boosted. Maybe I can boost it. Right, this is doing extreme settings here. And you can also hear what it's removing here. That's what it's removing. So if I take it off, right, it just really balances your sounds a lot more. I use this absolutely all the time. I also have Soothe 2 on my master bus just to make sure that everything is kind of smooth. Again, the settings are not going to be this harsh. They're not going to be this extreme. Usually I have a very, very low setting, something like this. And then I might bring that down like this. Like it's very, very minimal, but just to contain any peaks or resonances I might be poking through, I have that on my mastering chain just because it's so good and useful, and it just really helps to clean up sounds and make them a lot more pleasant to listen to. All right, so neutron EQs for surgical removing of resonances. Soothe 2, again, same thing, to remove resonances and kind of balance out the tone of your sounds. And then the last one that I use here is are just filters. And usually I'm going to use stuff from Kilohertz to do that. And these are more like for creative uses. So if I load up something like Snap Heap here, and I can have something like filter or even a nonlinear filter here, but usually let's go with a filter. What I might do here is just have an LFO like this, and maybe I'll affect the cutoff here like this. Right, and I would use this creatively, kind of like this, to shape their sound. Right, usually I have this inside of something like Faceplant to creatively design stuff, but filters are another way that I do it. And like I said, I use a whole bunch of different ones, but most of them are just from Kilohertz. All right, let's move on to category number 3, and this is going to be distortions. So my go-to distortion is usually going to be from, again, Kilohertz. This is actually a free one, so if you can pick it up, it's a really great sounding. I find them just really clean and easy. Usually I go for something like a fold-back distortion here, and I'll usually go around 50%. And then I'll go from there to edit it. Now, I can obviously do a lot more than that. You can pick from different distortion types and affect it that way. Now, if you have a paid version, you can also get Shaper Table, which is kind of a just full out featured distortion unit. And this is normally what I go to if I want to be a bit more specific about the sound or the distortion that I want, because I just have more control over it. But yes, Shaper Table and Shaper are my kind of go-tos for distortion at the moment, just for like basic amounts of distortion. If I'm doing something like creative, my go-to is going to be something like Thermal by Output. And I just like this one just because of the presets. So many different presets you can choose from here. And they just sound great. And it's just easy to go through them and get different sounds out of them. All right, but you get the idea. Finally, the last kind of distortion, it's not really a distortion, it's actually a clipper that I use, and that is Crafter. And I've recently got this, and I've been really liking it and been using it quite a lot. And I normally just put it on like the group bus, and then I'll just pull up the drive until I get a bit more volume out of it, and until the transients are really kind of poking through or hitting. Especially, this is really good for like transient heavy stuff, explosions, impacts, things like that. So let's have a listen here. Right, so if you wanted to, you could just go straight for the multi and do 100% wet, or the single band, or you can do a mix of all three, or just a mix of the multi-band. Right, but you can kind of shape your sound that way. Right, so generally I like to use this as a subtle effect, a subtle like clipping and boosting of the overall volume of my sound. But like I said, I think it sounds great. It's easy to use, so I use that a lot. Okay, next, let's go to reverbs. So for reverbs, I actually use 3 different ones, and I tend to, overall, generally speaking, I don't use a lot of reverb in my sound design unless it's... well, there's 2 things. 1 is for creative uses, or 2 for spatializing sounds, like putting sounds in a space. And so those are kind of the 2 reasons why I would use reverb. But like I said, generally I like to keep my sounds relatively dry, just so that when they are used or need to be put in a space, I can actually do that and not have it sound weird. So All right, so the first one that I will normally use just as a go-to is just the kilohertz reverb, just because it's super simple and easy. I can just slap it on, increase the size here if I want to, the mix, right? Nothing complex. It just has your basic controls, but it works. Right, that's the sound. It already has a bit of reverb mix on it, but hopefully you get to see what it sounds like. Right, and the other one that I'll use as my go-to here is ROM. I find this one to be pretty nice here, so it sounds like this. Right, and you just have different modes here you can also play between, which sounds nice. Right, so these are really for creative reasons, creative uses, usually for like spells and stuff like that is what I'll be using these for. And like I said, for spatializing stuff, what you probably want is something like Altiverb. Personally, I haven't yet come across a project where I need that. So for me, I have Stratus. Here we go. This is Stratus 3D. And in here, you can have a lot of different options for different halls, different spaces, even exterior spaces. So it's a great like positioning reverb for positioning sounds in a space. Right, so this type of reverb for putting stuff in a space is convolution reverb, and convolution reverbs generally are really great for positioning sounds in a space. And then the other two here are algorithmic reverb, so ROM and then the kilohertz reverb, algorithmic reverbs. All right, so pretty simple, pretty quick. Let's go on to the next category here, and this is going to be for granular sounds and granular effects. So let's have a listen to the sound that I have here, just so we can see. And for granular effects, normally a go-to for me is going to be portal by output. And again, the reason why I like this one is kind of similar to why I like thermal. It's just because there's so many presets, and it's just it's easy to just kind of load something, and then if you want to tweak it further, you can tweak it here with the big like XY knob, right? So if I go here into a preset and we have a listen to it, right, you can create a lot of really cool artifacty sounds that are kind of sci-fi. Right, it's also really easy to create some cool, like, glitchy sounds as well. All right, but you get the idea there. Now, if you're looking for something that is free, one that I do go to quite often too, for if I'm looking for a particular type of sound, and this one is Argot Lunar, and this is what it sounds like. Right, so that's just loaded straight, the initial patch here. And you can change the duration of your grains here. So it sounds a lot more grainy, or you can bring it all the way up. Right, so depending on the effect you're trying to go to, you can also increase the amount of grains as you get. Right, so you can just get that classic like granular sound really quickly with this. So that's why I like this one. Now I should give a special mention here to all the glitch machine stuff. I'm not going to go through each one of them here, but I do have if I'm creating any kind of like creative stuff or special effects or stuff like that that need glitchy sounds, I'll go for any of the glitch machines glitch effects here. They're just really great for that. So that's another one, and also Stutter Edit 2 by Isotope, another one that I might go to for creative effects. All right, let's go move on to number 6, and this is going to be pitch manipulation. So for pitch shifting or just pitch manipulation in general, there's a few effects that I like to go to. So the first one that I'm going to try is the pitch shifter from Kilohertz. And the reason I say that try is because every different pitch shifter is going to have different algorithms, and it's going to affect the sound differently. So this one here, let's say I bring it down by 12. Let's have it listen to how it treats the sound here. So if I take it off. Okay, so that's pitch shifter. Another one that I will try out is manipulator. And for this one, I actually don't touch the pitch knob. I'll usually touch the format here. Right, so very different than this. Right, this one sounds a bit more spectrally. Right, so that's what I'll do there. I mean, you could try to bring down the pitch as well. I don't think it'll sound as good. All right, so they're similar, but usually I like to just play around with the format just because I know I can get more of a different tones or a different sci-fi feel, right? So if I bring down both the pitch and the format, it sounds similar to the pitch shifter, but still a bit different. The other one that I might go to or try out is Little Altar Boy by Sound Toys here. So normally I would link both of these together and bring it down. Right, again, this one sounds completely different than the other two, and you'll notice like it also goes like very wide if you're listening on headphones or speakers. So if I do use this, normally I have to be careful and make sure I use something to recenter my sound after, because right now it's just completely changed the stereo positioning of it. Right, but if I'm looking for some sort of creative effect or creative pitch shifting, this is a good one to go to. Right, if I'm not using any of these, what I'll normally do is I'll just change the pitch directly from within the item properties here. That's another way you could just do it, is just change it here and then play back. Right, so if I'm going to change the pitch or the tone, those are going to be the 3 or 4 ways I'm going to approach it and see what works best. All right, the next category of sound effects here of plugins that I use pretty consistently are going to be noise restoration or reduction plugins. And for that, most of what I use is stuff from RX. So I'm going to use stuff like the D-Click. If I have like little clicks and pops, I'll use like RX D-Click here, RX D-Noise. So I'm not going to load these right now because I don't really have any samples ready, but the spectral denoise is what I would use if there's like a weird noise. Usually this is for like recordings and like raw files, sound files that I've recorded and stuff like that. Same thing with the D-Click. If there's any like weird clicky sounds that for some reason got into the recording, I'll fix it up with that. And then one that you could also use is D-Reverb. And this can be used also as a creative tool. Like if you're really trying to get a really raw sound, you can like overdo the reduction and then get like some cool sounds and textures out of that. But those are the kind of the 3 most common ones that I use. And then if in terms of like actually reducing noise, I use M ratio MB a lot. This is by Mellow Production. It is free, so you can grab it if you want to. I'll have links in the description. But basically, all this does is reduce any noise from the file and only leaves tonal content, right? So this can be really, I use this as a design tool, not as a audio restoration tool. So if I play this on our sample here that we have, right, you can get a lot of cool textures out, especially if you're looking for like really tonal stuff, tonal content. This is a great way to do that using M ratio MB. All right, the next category here will also be pretty quick and short, just because I think most people already know or have heard of Faceplant. If you don't already have Faceplant and you're a sound designer, you should definitely check it out and look into it. It's basically a powerhouse of a sound design, of a synthesis, of a synth that has both analog, granular, samplers, wavetables, noise generators. Right, it has basically everything you could ever need to design sounds, all within here. Plus, it has your modulator, so you can modulate using a whole bunch of different things, and then you have your effects. Right, so everything kind of works together, and it's just seamless, and it's all in one screen here, so you can see everything at one go. You don't have to open up different screens or anything like that. So it's super easy to use, super streamlined, and just a really great workflow and a powerhouse. So if you're looking for a synth, Faceplant, no doubt about it, that's what my recommendation would be, because I use that all the time, every day, as my go-to synth of choice. After that, if I'm looking for something quite specific, Vital is a great one. It's free, and I use this for like sci-fi stuff. It's just really, really good for designing sci-fi sounds. If you're interested in picking it up, like I said, it's free. I also have a core pack of different wavetables, because when you get the free version, like it doesn't come with a lot of wavetables, but I created a whole pack of wavetables, and these are also free. I think there's like a few hundreds of different wavetables that you can get in here of different stuff that you can use right away in your sound design. So if you're looking at picking it up or just want to expand your sound palette with Vital, you can check out the DDA core pack. All right, but generally, those are the 2 synths that are my go-tos for sound design. All right, next, let's talk about low-end stuff. So, yeah, bass enhancers, bass harmonic enhancers, and stuff like that. Here we go. Let's have a look here at our sound here. This is going to be our sound just as an example. Okay, let's say that's our sound. So my first go-to for creating sub-content here is going to be sub-synth. Just because I don't have a lot of low-end and harmonic like enhancers. So this is the one I do have, so I tend to use this quite a bit. right? You can hear how powerful. You'll need to be wearing headphones and or studio monitors to hear this, but like you can hear a big difference in the sub and the low end of your sound with this on and off. So let's have a listen. Right? It just makes a huge difference to your sound. So that's one I use quite a lot, just to add that weight and that size to your sound. The next one here that I might use is Disperser. Now, this is not necessarily a harmonic enhancer or low-end enhancer, but this is something that I use to enhance my low end. I mean, you don't have to just use it on the low end. I mean, you can use it on anywhere in the frequency spectrum here. But generally speaking, I find it sounds best on the low-end content. Again, you'll have to be listening with headphones. This one's pretty subtle right now. But it is adding a bit of low end to that. So I do like to use Disperser for that, for the low end. Another one that is my kind of go-to that I will sometimes use or experiment with is Basslane. This is a free plugin or a free version of their plugin, sorry. And yeah, so here Basslane, basically what it's going to do is you're going to add some side harmonics to your bass. So and then you can choose which frequency you want to add the harmonics to. So generally speaking, I'll have mine either like in the sub area, like 100 or lower, around 400, or all the way up at 25K. So if I bring the harmonics all the way up to our sound here, so let's turn it off and then we'll bring it back in. So it's pretty subtle. Again, you don't really hear it. At least personally, I don't really hear it. It's more felt than heard. I think if I bring it down, you might be a bit more obvious the difference it can make here. Yeah, you can really hear it there. Right, so it's obviously way too much, so I could probably bring that down. Bring in the width even a bit. Right, but it's just going to beef up that frequency here. Maybe I can go even lower, around 100. Same thing here, right? It just makes your low end way wider. Obviously, that might not be exactly what you want. You probably want to bring it in, but that is something you can use with that. All right, last but definitely not least, in terms of low end plugins here, is going to be Enforcer. All right, so here I have a sample here. Let's just have a listen. Right, nothing special or unique or anything. Right, but if I want to add like impact or like a transient or a thump or something like that, I'll use Enforcer for that usually. Right, you can already hear it right away. If I bring up the wet dry, this is what it's adding to the sound. But they have a library of preset here that you can choose from for adding different thumps or drops even for like explosions if you want a bass drop, Foley like a cloth smack. Right, so depending on like what part of the sound, what frequency of the sound you want to add, how much impact you want to create, like there's a whole library of presets, and it just works. Right, so I like to add it for that. Like I said, it's a little bit subtle. It's great for either enhancing just like a layer or just the overall group of the sound. It just works. So Enforcer by Boom Library. All right, let's go to our next category of sound here, and these are going to be your Transient Designers. And for these, let's go have a look at this effect here that I have. So I'm going to turn off all of the plugins I have for this one, and let's have a listen to it like this. Right, so that is the sound. All right, so the first plugin that I will use here is Spiff by OEK Sound. Where'd it go? There you go. So I'm going to turn off these here. All right, so here is Spiff. Right, and this is basically a transient designer. So what it's going to do is it's going to add punch or transients to the points here that you have included. So I have these ones here low. So I'm going to click on the delta here so we can hear what it's doing. Right, so that is what it's adding to the sound. Right, it can also cut, so you can cut out transients if you want to with this plugin. But for the purpose here, let's keep it on boost. Right, so that's what it's adding. So pretty cool. So that's one of the plugins I like to go to just to boost specific frequencies or parts of the sound if I want to. Another one that I like here is just your kilohertz transient shaper. So let's have a listen to that one. Right, it's just great for adding punch. You can also control the sustain, which I sometimes do. I'll just have the attack up and then just bring down the sustain, bring up the pump just to really have a clicky sound. Right, just like that sometimes. But for now, this is good. Right, so with all of my effects on here, Crafter, the limiter, and even subsynth, sounds like this. Right, big difference from this here. Right, we're really transforming it from having like no impacts or transients to having a lot. All right, and the last kind of transient shaper that I might go to, I don't use it that much, but sometimes I do if I want to try to, if I want to shape like the tone of a sound in a certain way. Sometimes I'll go to this just because I can get different results, and this is Neutron's transient shaper. So here I can like just add attack to just the highs if I wanted to. Can do like extreme like this, maybe on the lows. Yeah, I'm clipping here, so I should add a limiter so I don't drop the sound here. Right, you can really change up the sound if you really wanted to. Right, but this is another one that I'll play around with, kind of shaping the tone, but also the transients of a sound. All right, let's go to our last category, and this is one is going to be for like special use case plugins or just the others in miscellaneous that didn't really fit into the categories that I had for this video. So the first one is going to be recenter, and if you've seen any of my videos, you'll have seen me use this quite a lot. I use this all the time for positioning sounds or just for keeping sounds centered in front of the listener. So normally for this plugin, I like to use the multi-band. I just find it sounds better. Right, you can even bring in the width here, make the sound a bit more narrow overall. Or you can make it super wide. If you want, you can use, sometimes I'll use the mono filter here just to keep the bass centered and not have the bass super wide. Right, sounds great. And then what you could also do here is position the sound left to right in the stereo field. Right, so you can create you have a lot of control over your sound basically with this. So I really like this plugin. I use it all the time. All right, the next one is a creative plugin. It's actually a multi-effect plugin that I like, and this is Infiltrator. And the reason I like it is because I don't have a lot of multi-effect plugins that have FFT effects or like spectral effects. So what's great about Infiltrator 2 here is that you have this whole category of different spectral effect sounds that you can play around with and even modulate with either LFOs or it can trigger also with the sound. So this is going to trigger based on the incoming sound signal, and maybe I'll have it go up over time like this. Let's have a listen. Right, so already you're getting like some really cool effects that'd be really hard to replicate with other plugins. Right, but you get the idea. So along with the FFT spectral effects here, obviously you can put up to 10 in a chain here. You also have your regular effects, like a comb filter frequency, shifter, ring mod, FM vocoder. And yeah, you have a lot of your basic effects here, and everything can be modulated together and linked together. And you even have a step sequencer if you need one for whatever reason. So Infiltrator, awesome little plugin. Use that all the time as well for designing, usually for like sci-fi stuff. All right, the last one, and definitely not the least that I have here, it's actually depending on which DAW you're using, it's either going to be a plugin on your DAW. You'll probably want to have it inserted on your monitoring effects so that it's not affecting the sound itself, but just what you're hearing back. But for me, I have it on my system. And what I'm using here is Sound ID Reference. So basically everything that's coming out of my speakers, if I'm listening on my studio speakers, or on my headphones, if I'm listening or working on my headphones, is going to come through this plugin. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to affect, it's going to place an EQ based on the sound of my room. So I've recorded my room. It's done a test on my room. And this is kind of the EQ of my room. So I have like a node here in my room at around whatever this is, 120 maybe-ish. Right? That is plus whatever that is. What is that? 8 dB, right? So I have a big boost in my room here around 8, or maybe that's a dip. Yeah, sorry. So it's actually a dip here. So I have a dip in my room at 120, and I have a boost in my room here at around whatever this is, 80, right? So what this plugin is doing is making sure that everything that is coming out is going to be EQ'd to my room so that it sounds as flat as possible, right? And this has helped me a lot to be able to balance sounds properly, to be able to mix sounds properly, to be able to identify frequencies and to make sure that my sounds and my work just translates across different speakers, across different systems really well. So it's something that I don't really touch. It's kind of there, but it affects everything. It affects all the work that I do because it's always on and it's always affecting what I'm doing. So it's something that I, like I said, I use this every day. So I really want to share that with you guys because it is such a big part of my work, and I do really, really recommend it. It's just been a game changer for my work. So if you don't already have it, SonarWorks reference ID, super recommended. All right, so that is it. These are the plugins that I use as of right now, today in February 2025. My sounds and my plugins and everything is always kind of changing and evolving, and I do try to make it a point of always experimenting with different plugins just so I don't get so used to using one specific plugin and then kind of getting into a rut of like always using it the same way and never being creative with it. So I do have other plugins that I use, but usually I will go to them and try them out every so often just to try to get different sounds out and think differently, think creatively. Yeah, so I do want to mention that just because I'm using this doesn't mean that you have to use these, doesn't mean that they are the best or what you need for your work. It's just what I'm using right now. If there's something that you did find that could be useful that you don't have or you've never heard of, then yeah, super highly recommend checking them out. Like I said, these are things that I use every day in my work as a sound designer. So if that helps you, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see another video just around sound design in general, I'll have it on here in the screen in front of you. And yeah, I think that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.